In this video, I'm going to show you how to create stunning collage papers from 7 things you have around your house and yard. And the last one is my absolute favorite, so make sure you stay to the end. Hello, my name is Catherine Rains. I'm a mixed media collage artist, and welcome to Tune In Tuesday, where I share art demos to expand your mixed media toolbox. If you see value in my art demos, I would deeply appreciate a thumbs up, and if you would subscribe to my channel below. Links for all the supplies to make these papers are down below under the word more, although most of the supplies you need are already in your home. You might also want to check out my free 5-day online workshop, Collage Kickstart, where I teach you how to use all the collage papers taught during Tune In Tuesday to make fabulous collages the very first try. You can sign up from the link below. So let's get into creating gorgeous collage papers from things you already own. Today, we're going to experiment with everyday items from our home and also from our trash to see how we can use these items in making collage papers. Now, by the way, I have no idea how this is going to turn out. I got inspired by a few Instagram posts to kind of go wild, and I'm bringing you along for the ride. First up, let's see what this toilet paper roll will do. So I'm just cutting it in half and then experimenting with just smushing it in half and using it as a mark maker. So I'm just randomly dipping this in a palette paper full of my colors. In this case, it's phthalo blue green shade and Hansa yellow light mixed together with a little bit of white, and just making some marks across this page until I fill it up. Pretty cool effect with such a simple mark maker, I must say. Next up is this plastic straw. This has been hanging out in my studio for a very long time, and now it's getting a very good use. So I'm just cutting small slits along the bottom there. And then one of the tricks to making this work is once you cut your slits, and you want them pretty small, you fan them out with your hand so that they're basically flat when you push paint against it. So you can see I've got a palette paper full of mixed paint there, and I'm literally pushing the straw down into the paint so that I can then push it onto the paper. And there's so many different ways you can do this, and I just kept experimenting with layering different colors on top of each other until I got the effect I wanted. So I have to admit, I became a little obsessed with this straw and kept experimenting with different ways that I could use it. So instead of overlapping all the paint like I did in the last paper, I allowed a lot more of the paper itself to show through. So there's a lot of white that's showing through, which I really, really love this effect. But it's totally different than the last paper. It's amazing how many different kinds of papers you can make with a simple straw. And I could not resist trying this on black paper too. So searching around my studio, I found another straw. This one has a much smaller opening. It's a paper straw. And I'm trying to cut these little slits at the end much skinnier to see if I can get a totally different look for my collage paper. Again, I found that the trick to making this work is to push the little edges that you cut flat so they can easily dip into the paint and then mark onto your paper. The kind of paper I'm using, by the way, is a handmade watercolor paper, which I am completely in love with. And of course, I had to try this one on black paper too. Love, love, love this. Found this corrugated box from something I built from IKEA. I've been holding on forever to this thing, thinking certainly I could turn this into something. And lo and behold, I figured out a way to use this. I took some packing string and just wrapped it around this to make a mark making tool. After experimenting a bit with this, I discovered that if I painted the string as opposed to, let's say, rolling it with a brayer or dipping it into my paint, this worked better. So I love the patterns that you can make with this. So simple and very elegant. Since I had a little bit left over from my last paper, was just a blotting sheet, I decided it wouldn't be fun just to fill this whole sheet up. I didn't want to waste any paper, so I just started layering with this tool, and it just ended up being this scrumptious layered piece that's very, very unusual. No one would be able to tell how I actually came up with this because I'm not sure how I did either. I searched all around my studio for something square that would do the same kind of technique, but it would give me a more uniform look. So this little box, which was actually part of one of my classes that I taught online, which was Collage Keepsake, was the perfect solution. So just wrapped it around this and I tied it around that little brass lock there. And this ended up being a perfect square mark maker. Love the effect of this. And again, since I had a blotting paper there that was protecting my table, I thought, why not? Let me fill the whole page up with this square mark making tool. So simple and makes such an elegant piece of collage fodder. And yet another box from IKEA. So I wet this down so that I can get that cardboard top off easily. So I peel the top layer off, which reveals this beautiful honeycomb mark maker. Using a brayer was the absolute perfect solution for this to get the paint on it. Every time I made an impression down on the piece of paper, I just rolled a little bit more paint on and just pressed. It was so simple and such an elegant look. My search for mark makers, I went in my backyard. I found this little pine needle thing, and just to secure it so all the pine needles wouldn't go everywhere, I put a rubber band at the end and then cut the top just so that all those needles would be even so that I could press them into paint. This is another one of those magical mark makers that no one will know how you actually got that effect. And it's such a cool paper, such a cool mark. I've actually used this corrugated board for just mark making with the lines on it against paint, but I thought it might be fun to use it as a shape. So I take masking tape to seal the two ends up so that I can create a triangle out of it. And of course, I'm just going to experiment with this like all the other ones. So I just dip it in paint and start smearing it down and seeing what it'll do. Pretty simple paper, but sometimes you need a plain paper in your collages, something that has texture, but not a lot going on. And this one will really fit the bill when I start turning these into collages. And of course, I also wanted to try it as a plain old mark maker. So what would the triangle look like if I used it just as a triangle? And I really love these interlocking marks. And these unpredictable marks with two different colors is a whole different effect with the same simple triangle. So for my last paper, I got out an MDF board, which is just a heavy board that I had cut at the hardware store just to hold what I'm about to do. This is a sun-kissed lemon bag from the grocery store. Cut it up because I think this bag could create some really interesting marks. I'm going to put a piece of drawing paper on top of my board and then the lemon bag on top of that. And I'm going to roll paint over the lemon bag and it will go into the paper. It's going right through the lemon bag and creating a texture. Once I've got it good and coated with paint, I spray water on it to get all of that paint to spread out on the board, but then the lemon bag on top is going to create some kind of impression after I let it dry. So I'm going to put a piece of deli paper on top and then a book to weigh this down and let it dry overnight. And then we will reveal what we get once it's dry. So it's the next morning and my bag is kind of stuck to the paper. and actually the deli paper is also stuck to the bag. So I had to very gingerly get the bag off without destroying the paper underneath. So I wet it down a bit and then just very carefully remove the bag. And it did pull up some of the drawing paper, but it also gave me some beautiful texture underneath as well. And again, when we're using collage papers, we're not going to use the entire paper. We're going to use little corners or sections of the paper. And I absolutely love all the texture this created. But in order for this to be a usable piece of paper, I'm going to have to protect the paper. So first I'm just going to mop up some of that extra water that I had sprayed down there, and then take some matte medium and just paint it on so that the paper that is lifted from the lemon bag pulling it up will be permanently adhered to the collage paper itself so that it won't come up later on. And then I'll let this dry and see what we get. Now this is all dry and I am totally in love with the texture created here. Something that I didn't expect, and I will definitely be using this in my next collage. So my collection of collage papers are now done. And I am actually really surprised at what I got out of everyday items in my home. In Collage Kickstart, which is my free 5-day workshop, there's a link to that at the bottom of this video. One of the lessons is to find household items that you can use for mark making. Well, this took it to a whole new level because the things I used to make these papers were things I had never even considered. I just went on a treasure hunt around my home and the result was this. And I encourage you to do the same thing. Have fun playing with different textures, dipping it in paint and seeing what you come up with. I hope that you enjoy this process as much as I did. To learn how to make many more types of collage papers, check out the links that are about to appear right here. And be sure to check out my free 5-day online class, Collage Kickstart. The link to sign up is under the word MORE below. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I would be deeply grateful if you would. And I'll see you back here next week for Tune In Tuesday.